So one of the aspects of Turing's work that we were both really interested in, and is something that he's perhaps not quite so well known for, we deliberately stayed away from most of the work that he did during the war, particularly around the Enigma machine, and we focused on some of his writing and thinking that was in the latter part of his life. So he did a lot of work around morphogenesis, and I think Kinneson can explain better than I what that actually is. But one of the sources that we used was his paper on morphogenesis, and we did various things with that. So on the left is my poem called Morphogenesis, which is a combination of two found texts. One is his morphogenesis paper, and the other one are the court records of his conviction, having been convicted for what was called gross indecency at the time. Turing was a homosexual and had a male lover, and they were caught and convicted and tried. So this is a sort of blackout hybrid poem from those two texts. On the 17th day, being a male person of gross indecency, reacting together and diffusing through a tissue, plea, guilty. 1951 at Wilmslow was party to a male person, triggered off by random disturbance, plea, guilty. A male person committed with Arnold, mathematically convenient, though biologically unusual system, plea, guilty. Being a person was party to an act of decency, gives rise to patterns reminiscent of dappling, plea, guilty. The second person, committed, determine the anatomical structure of the resulting organism, plea, guilty. A person was with a person, contain well-known physical laws, are sufficient to account for many of the facts, plea, guilty.
So morphogenesis is just the process that cells undergo to develop their shape. And it's the mathematics behind it, or the theories behind it, is also the things that we use to explain why we see certain patterns in nature. So for example, why a leopard has a spot, that's why a zebra has its stripes. And you can kind of just think about it as, different areas interacting with other areas. And, as some areas get bigger, then they kind of block off other areas, etc. And so you might get certain patterns in the sand, or you might get, spots on a leopard. So the mathematics behind it is actually just something called the reaction diffusion equations. And they just, literally react how different areas interact with each other. And so one of the things that I really wanted to do in this collection was kind of, as JP was saying, that Turing wasn't just about code breaking. Turing had this, despite his short life, this really wide-ranging career, and he was just a very curious person, and really easily applied his intellect to lots of different things. And so one of the things he was interested in was how these patterns come about, and they're now called Turing patterns, although he didn't call them that. And so when I was thinking about using the algorithm that I wrote to input images that would then produce poems, I wanted some of those images not just to be, a phrase I was picking up out of, JP's previous poem that I was responding to, but perhaps something that also connected to Turing's work. So all of these poems start to become not just a conversation with myself and JP, but also a conversation with the algorithm that's producing the poem, and then also a conversation with Turing himself, using his work. So what I've done here is I've modeled the reaction diffusion equations computationally, and then I've used, I think, a random seed to create some patterns. And I've just taken a snapshot of one of these patterns at a random time, and I've used that as input into my algorithm that then either use the binary phoneme dictionary or you know, left some gaps that I could then fill in. But by the time we get to this point here, the binary phoneme dictionary is actually quite full, and so, you know, as the poet, I've almost lost all control over what exactly the algorithm is producing. So this is my poem. It is found experimentally that the axis is normally in some definite direction. That phrase is taken from the Morphogenesis paper. And again, the input into the algorithm was this image that you can see on the screen, and that is modeling, using Turing's paper, the reaction diffusion equations. Animal, unmade thing, a made thing, meaning space, a made space, a made thing, makes you end, an unleaven android, that space made, transgressing, whelm that trans flesh, ingest, lives, ingressings, made gresh flesh, ingest flesh, entry digressing, that space made, an android, any male. So as you can see, the algorithm starts making up its own words. It's kind of putting phonemes together that, you know, don't go together in any word in our English dictionary. And so, you know, as the poet, all I can literally do is use white space to separate phonemes. But, you know, at some point, those phonemes that need to be separated aren't words by themselves, and there aren't words when they're connected to the next phoneme. And so we start to get these made up words like transgressing and ingressings and gresh, which all sound really lovely, but aren't real words as far as I know.